Good morning, everybody. I think it's a great day. Good to see a lot of attendance in this forum and the August Forum of Marketers and Media people here. I'm Ajit Varghese. I head the revenue function for JioStar Entertainment. As we all are aware that in today's world, a lot of changes that we are seeing in the last 6-8 months, the business realities have changed, the media environment have changed, and I think the new lingo of marketing and media coming together is also changing. I think, so what I would love to do first is, a lot of people ask us the questions of, Disney, Jio, Viacom has all come together. What really is happening? What are we looking forward to? Yes, the merger is good. There's a great media conglomerate which has started. So as we have now spent time on the last 3 months merging the two companies, I'm now stepping back and saying, okay, what is in it for us marketers, right? I think at the end of the day, what are we bringing on the table for you? So let me take a step back and say, let's look at the media evolution of India. I think that's very important to put the context right. So unlike if you start looking at how the media is evolving in India, it's a slightly different, fundamentally different trajectory. If you look at digital growth in the West, it has come at the expense of television. However, when you look at India, it is slightly more nuanced and following a different trajectory. Now, look at how television is maintained its penetration in India. Almost 880 million viewers of television still exist in India, and this is not dropped. Yes, there are nuances of pay TV and free TV economics starts changing, but the penetration of TV being the mainstream media in Indian households is continuing. Does that mean that other mediums are not growing? Other mediums are growing. If you look at the last 1 decade, social platforms have catapulted, right? So if you look at social platforms, which has almost come to around 500 odd million. Now but having said that, post-COVID, one of the most important phenomena that I've seen is the growth of OTT. If you look at last 5 years, the growth of consumption through streaming platforms has grown 10x. In the last 2.5 years, it's doubled. We are currently looking at a penetration of 550 million viewers watching OTT alone. I'm not talking about social platforms here. So that's the kind of growth the streaming platforms have done. And what's important to understand in context is not about who is growing, who is downing. It is all growing together. So I think Indian media is actually slightly more nuanced of showing that it's about coexistence of multiple mediums, and it's about compounding reach, which is growing. I think that's the beautiful story of India. And increasingly what we are observing is if brands wants to improve their effectiveness, I think it's not TV versus digital. It's about making sure that how we can make TV and digital working together. Increasingly, we are seeing that the brands are taking this approach of a multi-screen or a full funnel approach in order to tap into this India story. And let me take some examples. I think it's important to understand of the context. Let me take some marquee programs like Bigg Boss. I think we all know about Bigg Boss. When I look at Bigg Boss, and since Jio and Disney has come together, now Bigg Boss happens in across 7 states, right? Bigg Boss in television can reach 450 million viewers, unique viewers, and that has grown over the last 3-4 years. So imagine a program in television is actually growing. What's more interesting is in the last 3 years, the watch time of digital has also grown 3x or 5x. Now, if I look at the ratio of watch time of Bigg Boss, 55% of the viewing time is on television, 45% is happening on digital, and both are complementing and growing. And that frankly is a surprise for me too, as a media professional over last so many years. When we say, oh, it's shifting, somebody needs to fall. It's not falling. Maybe it's the heterogeneity of Indian audience. Maybe it's the cohorts, different cohorts growing in different ecosystem, or people are using multimedia when at home or when outside, right? So there is multi-screen behavior which is happening. Is this unique to Bigg Boss? No. Even if I look at a program like Cook with Kumali in Tamil Nadu, it's almost the same ratio, 60-40, and it's growing. when I look at daily serials, let's take an example of Anupama or Ye Rishta Kya Kehlata Hai. Almost 25% of the viewing time currently is on digital, with television ratings not falling at all. And that's the uniqueness of the programs and the context that we are talking about. And when I look at this TV versus digital story, I think we are now much clearer that, you know, when brand starts using this multi-screen approach, when brand starts using both television and in conjunction with digital, the brand intent or the brands can actually start growing. And yes, when I talk about brand building, actually sometimes I feel it's a misnomer in today's marketing world, right? Because a lot of questions that comes to us is, why should I build brands? Why shouldn't I just go into performance marketing? There are enough signals of intent out there, right? So I think our views can be different on this one, but what we have seen across is, in spite of a clear 60% effectiveness score increases in marketing when we do brand building, in spite of a strong research behind this, I think a lot of money is moving to performance marketing, right? And standing here, maybe our views could be different brands, different TGs could be different. I'm not here to contest the view, but one thing is clear is, when I start looking at, if as brand marketers, we start looking at only intent signals as power of marketing, then we must be aware that we are renting our consumers. We are not owning them. We are not building brand love. We are not building brand story. We are not building the brand connect or loyalty that we ideally want from the brand. I think so it's not wrong versus right. It's more about which is a short-term plan and which is a long-term plan. And that to me we are very clear that when a brand equity is raised and there is a multiplier effect. And now multiplier effect is in the performance metrics, multiplier effect is in the sales metrics, or multiplier effect is in the profit multiples. We have seen that over a time. This is not a research that JioStar is talking about. I'm talking about WARC, I'm talking about audience research, I'm talking about researches which are conducted both globally and in India. So to me, when I look at this phenomenon of brand building, I think one thing is clear: do we rent our consumers or do we build our consumers? And I think this whole piece about brand building starts coming even before intent. And let's take a step back. Even before search happens, your brand a lot of marketing has to work before the search happens. And that to me is the USP of brand building. And that's the core of brand building, where we have to build our brands much before search, much before intent is expressed. Yes, while it's not easy. It's a very distracted world we are talking about. We are talking about 100x multiple of ad exposures today. We are talking about attention span coming down in multiples of hundreds. And over the last 10, 15, or even 50 years, we have seen this multitude of messages. I think Kanika just spoke about attention, and I think I resonate with that attention thing. And attention is not about, I know increasingly it's not about making consumers look at your ad, right? It's more about creating that long-lasting, slightly more engaged, slightly more depth in that view to make sure that I get your attention and have a slight long-lasting impression. It's not a fleeting view. It's about long-lasting impressions, right? And long-lasting impressions has a different effect both on the emotion and both on the loyalty of those brands. And here is where therefore I bring the crux of my presentation. And I think increasingly what we have seen is when we look at successful campaigns and what runs behind those successful campaigns, I think increasingly brands are looking at long-lasting impressions, and the concept of attentive reach starts coming in. And what is attentive reach? I think it's more about whether the whole concept of ACE that we spoke about. It's about attention. It's about putting your ads, putting your messages in the right context, and when I'll explain this context a bit more detail, and getting that emotional connect, brand connect with the consumers. I think if you look at the research, whether it's the advertising council, whether it's the research that talks about when you advertise on a long form content, when you advertise on engaged content, what happens to brand metrics, what happens to down funnel metrics, and the whole concept of long story versus short story. Do display ads, do rich media, do emotional storytelling or long form ads, how does that play? And there is time and again research says that anywhere between 75 to 200% improvement in message effectiveness or brand effectiveness when we look at the right attention platforms, right contextual platforms. When I say contextual platforms, it's about engaged programs versus aggregated content or user generated content, or when you have long stories, put it out in the right messages. And when a lot of people today when ask me what is JioStar trying to do, I think JioStar is exactly coming and addressing this. I think we want to be the largest platform in the attention economy. I think this is one place where most marketers and I think one or two speeches that went before me also spoke about. Attention is the key metric. I mean, if you get the attention, all other down funnel metrics will start improving, whether it is comments, whether it is likes, whether you start looking at search as an indicator, whether you look at card data. And increasingly JioStar, if you look at the coming together of television, coming together of OTT in the programming and the original content space, we have today on television space around 760 million viewers. We have now got 300 million plus users on OTT. Now that goes up to 500 plus when a cricket series happen, and when it comes down to almost 250, 300 million when cricket is not there. And that's a significant number of people that we are talking about. And messages that go through this funnel almost have a 25% better attention span than UGC or aggregated platform. By the way, one of the key content platforms or message platforms for aggregator content in UGC platforms is the PGC content from television channels and news channels and sports content. That's one of the highest retention in UGC platforms. That's the level of context that I'm putting, why it's so important. Second is original content. I think every content gives a different experience for our users. We have 2.6 lakhs of programming hours, fresh content every year, and these are content for which people come every day. See, a lot of people, sometimes say that television is dying, it's not as effective as previously. But just remember, some of our programs are running for 5 years, 8 years, 3 years. What do you think the female is, or somebody who's watching that program is doing? Coming back every day 8 o'clock, coming back every day 9 o'clock for last 4 years. Is attention a problem? Is brand loyalty a problem? Attention is no longer is not a problem for original content makers. Attention is when you watch people sitting in the room may not be as heavy watchers of television. Maybe let's look at heavy content. On a weekend when you're watching a particular show on OTT, do you want to be disturbed? Do you go in between meetings to watch OTT content? You won't. You want to get that half an hour, 2 hours of content. You don't want to be disturbed. That's the level of context. And when the brand messages come in this context, we don't have an attention problem. I think attention problem happens when you start skipping. Yes, there are merits of discovery platforms. I'm not saying here to say that discovery platforms don't have a merit. And that to me is attention content is much before discovery platforms, because it gives you the message, it gives you the retention, it builds the loyalty. Last but not the least is the engaged viewing. I think we already spoke about most of the viewers come back, 80% plus come back every day, every week. And almost 36% of our CTV viewing today is happening on OTT content. Most of the other content on CTV is PGC content from television going to TV. Very rarely or very small percentage of people on CTV watches UGC or user-generated content or pastime content. That's the level of engagement which a professionally generated original content, long-form content is generating attention from our consumers. Now, I'm not saying it's very one-way traffic. We have a plethora of content. We are addressing about fiction shows across daily habits. We are talking about non-fiction shows, reality shows. We are talking about gripping originals, both which happen in the cinema space or in the only OTT exclusive content in OTT space, and fresh content from Hollywood or global content which are coming in. And each of these content that we are talking about, we are bringing in closer to 70-80% dominance or market share in this space. We are the only ones who will continue investing in the original content in the years to come, because we strongly believe we develop brands and we develop intent. If I look at television plus digital today, in our platforms, we have 400 million plus daily users. Now this is turning out to be one of the highest platforms in India today, if I look at daily users. And okay, monthly users, we will probably be close to 850 million. And as we are launching our FTA today, reaching 1 billion consumers is no longer a problem for us. I think for JioStar, reaching 1 billion audience in India in the next 3 to 6 months, once we launch FTA across, whether it's across pay television, whether it's across free television, paid users of streaming, free users of streaming, cricket, billion users is no longer a challenge. I'm not here to only say 1 billion users of JioStar, therefore come to us. All what we are saying is, what is in it for the brands? I think that's very critical. I think when we look at loved content, 80% repeat viewers, content across all cohorts, we are talking about household penetration of 80% plus. We are talking about 1,000 plus targeting options. We are talking about innovative formats, including thinking today, if you have to develop static ads on television, we are going to do that. If you are talking about day dominance, if you are talking about cost per day, if you are talking about 10 billion impressions on television, we are willing to converse with marketers on impressions or on reach frequency parameters. I think, to me, that we are now turning that flexibility of saying reach is no longer a constraint. Let's work out a partnership where we can think about how to drive top-line growth. I think one of the critical parts of top-line growth, as we all understand as marketers in the last 6-8 months, when that's one area where both urban and rural consumption is stagnating. I think we are here to help you develop brand performance by converting out-of-market audiences to in-market consumers. I think that's the critical part. Once the in-market consumers is clear, then we can do a lot of things, whether it's targeting, whether it is engagement, whether it is reels, whether it is any other programs to say, how do I convert them into cart, how do I convert them into purchase. I think that's the critical USP of JioStar coming together. We strongly believe we are strong builders of brands. We come before intent. We don't have an attention challenge. I think that's a social media platform problem, and I think that's something that is unique to them, but they also have their different advantage of down the funnel. And I think if we can combine the merits of each platform to make sure that we can all work together to grow top line, that's the need of the industry today. Thank you so much for our time. Ace it with JioStar. Thank you.